Hi everyone! We're delving a bit further into biodiversity and food systems in this video. And I'm here today with Ivo Walsmit at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to explain a bit more about your role in mainstreaming biodiversity. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about you and your role at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
Hello, I'm Ivo Walsmit. I'm an ecologist and I started last year within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a thematic expert for mainstreaming biodiversity. As you know, within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for our activities in development cooperations, we have programs on food security and water and climate, and it's my role to help my colleagues to be as nature positives within those projects as possible.
So Ivo, you mentioned mainstreaming biodiversity, which to me is still quite a complicated approach. Can you explain a bit more what that means, also in practice, and why it's so important for you to work on this?
We all know that biodiversity is declining all over the world. There's less and less insects in the world, and the species diversity is going down quite rapidly. And that has a lot of different aspects on the decline. And one of them is that we need more food. There's food production, which has a negative impact, but also climate change, population growth, and there's a lot of direct and indirect drivers. And as we don't spend money directly on biodiversity, it's important to be as nature positive within all the different activities that we do to mainstream biodiversity. So that means that, for example, if we do a food security project in East Africa, that we take into account the impact that the project has on biodiversity and try to shift it around towards a nature positive approach.
That's super interesting. We're here in the e-course learning about food systems. So could you also share a little bit more about why food systems and biodiversity is such an important connection?
I think it's important because healthy ecosystems, they create healthy food systems and resilient food systems. If we look to the future, population on Earth is still growing, and therefore a need for healthy and good quality food is needed. But the way we continue now, there's not enough space on this planet to have biodiversity or nature, to produce food, to have livestock, and to produce biofuels. So we need to change the system in order to keep producing healthy food for us, for all the people on Earth.
So I'm quite curious how this actually works in practice, because what you just mentioned sounds quite difficult to me to operationalize. So maybe a first question, do we know enough to actually bring this into practice? Is everybody on board with enough knowledge?
I think knowledge on this subject is growing fast, and especially with the publication of the Nexus report produced by IPBES. That's a major leap forward in the knowledge of how to approach biodiversity in relation to food security, water, climate, and health. Actually, this report states that if you identify a balanced approach, taking all these different themes into account, then you can create a positive impact on all these different themes. Whereas if you focus only on food systems or only on biodiversity, then you will only get a positive approach on these specific themes and a negative outcome on the other themes. So the thing is, I think the knowledge is growing rapidly, and most of my colleagues are aware of how these different themes are interconnected. The challenge is how to approach it, where within the ministry often we're still focused on solving a food security problem or a water management problem or a climate problem. I think the challenge for all of us will be to take a small step backward to understand the entire system before we start programming for new projects.
And delving a bit into that programming, do you have an example that you think is inspiring where those different elements come back or are better integrated?
Well, I think the example from the Beira corridor in Mozambique is a good example, which started as a water challenge. The city was dealing with floods and droughts, but they had the opportunity to take some time to understand the system, and there was a really good cooperation with the local government, and they saw that there was not only problems with the water, but there was also issues with the watershed, the management of the watershed, and therefore related to biodiversity. There were food security issues, there were private sector development issues. By understanding how all these different issues are connected with each other, they could identify an integrated approach, a systemic approach, and take away the obstacles step by step.
It's a very inspiring example, Ivo, in Mozambique. Here we are really with a community interested in food systems and biodiversity. Do you also have an example that really zooms in with that lens?
Well, I was thinking about the soil health program that we have. It's focused on healthy soil and resilient soils, which are essential for healthy food systems. And well, the interesting about this program is that it not only focuses on healthy soils, but it does it together with the local community, and it allows the farmers, the smallholder farmers in their area to make their own farm planning. So you make them responsible for the long-term planning of their farm, and this allows for a much more resilient system in the long term, because they're not only thinking about their short-term food production, but also on their long-term business investment, taking into account the natural resources that they have.
I hear you mention the term resilience quite a few times. There are also a lot of people hungry now. How do you see the relationship between trying to make sure that everybody has enough food, they can feed themselves in a healthy way, and it's affordable, with more long-term goal around resilience that you mentioned?
That's a difficult question. But I think the thing about resilience is that a healthy ecosystem or food production, a food system within a healthy ecosystem that creates a sort of kind of resilience that's needed for the production. Like we saw, that's not really preventing hunger, but in southern Spain last year with the large-scale floodings, it's not surprising that you have floodings in this area, as they cut down all the forest or the riparian habitats along the rivers, and then the system is no longer a resilient system, and all the citrus trees are being flooded away. And you see this happening everywhere in the world, that the natural system is under pressure, and therefore it's no longer resilient, and you have the risk of destroying the food system in one go.
Yeah, thanks Ivo for the inspiring examples that you share. I also wonder, do you have some final words of advice for all the students in this e-course, how they can strengthen the linkages between food systems and biodiversity in their own work and their own practices?
I think that will be a summary of what I already answered you in this interview. I think recent reports, not only the Nexus report, but also the water report from the Global Commission on the Economics of Water, they show that all the different themes that we find important and are working on are so much connected that we need to approach them in an integrated way. So for all the students that are looking at food systems in a detailed way, I think when you start programming new activities or projects on food systems, to also start by taking a first step back and to see how this food system is lying within a landscape, in a watershed, in a value chain, and to really understand the entire system before you start detailed planning.
Great advice. Thanks, Ivo.
Thank you.